Hello, hello, and welcome back to Dark ShadBros. It's been 2 weeks, and I want to thank everyone for your time and patience and inquiries. The bottom line is we had a faulty internet connection, which kind of waylaid us from doing our topic that we are finally going to be saluting and celebrating tonight. So thanks all of you who have tuned in on YouTube, on some of the various Dark Shadows groups. Thank you to the various Dark Shadows groups that have allowed us to post and promote and have been so support. My kitty is pulling on my my kitty is actually pulling on my headset here. So she's trying to strangle me, I guess. It's kind of an Angelique kind of a thing. So for those of you who don't know me, and there's no reason in this world why you should, my name is Peter Mack. I got involved in the Dark Shadows world officially when I was 12, started going to the conventions, got to know some of the stars, was fortunate and lucky enough to work with a handful of them, like Marie Wallace, my beloved Mary Lamar Rickey, Laura Parker, as the world better knows her as, and Nancy Barrett. Just had a blast going to the conventions and being a fan officially since I was 12. I work primarily as a musical theater entertainer, cabaret, primarily as a Judy Garland tribute artist, as well as a gaggle of other famous ladies, all live, not lip sunk, and a host of other things. I'm quite the entrepreneur. So at any rate, I'm going to introduce you to our next guest host, Michael Panzerato.
Really? Oh, sorry. Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Panzerato, as the gentleman just said. I am also a huge fan of Dark Shadows. Thanks to I'm acquainted with the series thanks to tonight's topic matter. So maybe we'll get to that a little later. I also do a lot of acting. I do quite a bit of theater. I have done a voice. I do supply the voice for Dr. Zachary Smith in an animated six-parter called Lost in Space from Earth. And so I have a lovely adoration for this series. So thank you for having me, and I'm very excited to be back after a 2-week stay.
And our other host, I believe he's in the scene right now, DJ Dr. John Mack.
Oh, hello, hello, hello. So I am a DJ, Dr. John Mack, Peter Mack's other half. We've been together 22 years. I was introduced to Dark Shadows rather quickly into our relationship. I jumped into a skit, or as the late, great Mary Lamar Rickey, a.k.a. Laura Parker, used to call them skites, because she thought it sounded more elegant than skit. And so I did that, and then worked with several of the different actors in several of the projects that I got a chance to produce. I produced Laura Parker in a stage piece called Mrs. Scrooge that Peter wrote and directed. And then Peter and I did a cabaret act with Nancy Barrett, and we have done several events over the years. The last big event we did was with both Donna Wandry and one of our great friends who is watching right now, Marie Wallace. We love you so much. So that is it. So let's bring everybody on screen here. We're live, by the way. We are broadcasting live. If anyone has any comments or questions, we will take questions on air. Please feel free to post them in chat or send a private message, and we'll make sure we get them on board. And we'd also like to thank all of the different groups who have decided to simulcast us tonight. We're really blessed and glad to be back.
Also, some people will view this later on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Like and subscribe and leave comments. All you have to do is like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us greatly because we need more subscribers. We want to keep this thing going. We've been having a lot of fun doing it, even though we got hoodwinked for 2 weeks. First of all, I love the fact that John has Judy Garland staring over his shoulder and Barnabas Collins, the talking MPI home video statue. What do we have there?
I was going to ask, is that Barnabas behind you?
Yeah, there's
happy to see me.
There's old Barney
That's
Boo,
so
and
cool.
you have him right next to the ruby slippers, and there's Judy behind him. So perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. How perfect for Pride Month, which we'll be talking about more as we go later into this month, because it is Pride Month. I did want to make a note that several of the Dark Shadows actors were openly gay. Mr. Louis Edmonds, chief among them, and there's a wonderful book that you can still buy on Amazon called Big Lou, which was kind of written with our dear friend. Some of you may remember him from the conventions, Craig Hamrick. Craig also wrote a wonderful book called Barnabas and Company. And he was very close with Louis and helped Louis to write his official biography. So check that out in honor of Pride Month. I know that Louis was a very openly proud, prideful gay man, and he was a stitch and a lot of fun. And I want to say it was anything like Roger Collins at the festivals. He was just a hoot. In fact, I met him as a little boy, and over the years he was always referred to me as a Peter Pumpkin-eater. That was he would say he was a Peter Pumpkin-eater. That's how Louis referred to me.
I can hear it too.
Totally. In that Roger Collins voice.
Look who just sent us a message. Eddie Lucas, who was in Guatemala for the summer.
Hey Eddie.
Hey Eddie.
My wife is from Guatemala. She's watching the Guatemala team play as we speak.
There you go.
Oh,
there
wow.
You go.
So Eddie has chosen us over Guatemala playing in the in
Well, they're here actually. They're in Baltimore playing.
Like-
they came up.
Oh, how cool is that?
There you go. There you go. Well, thanks for tuning in, Eddie. And I came fully prepared. I only have my ring this week. I had to take the old boy out of his box and, maybe beat my manservant later, so to speak. So, at any rate...
Of whom do we speak? Note the double entendre.
No double entendre. I actually had Michael.
Oh, manservant.
Manservant.
Just
Yes.
under the buzzer, Rose.
Just under the buzzer, Rose. Yes. I had a Madam Findlay moment a week ago tomorrow. We just moved into our new apartment, and I was coming down the stairs on a Saturday morning in a really good mood, which is rare for me. And coming down the steps, took a step and a half, and my feet just decided to go, whoo, right in the air on the hardwood staircase. John was luckily coming up it, but no matter how I tried to grab, I sputtered and spun around, and all of a sudden I just heard my head hit the wall, crack, crack, snap, and my legs went through the banister. And I wound up rushing to the local ER, and they were wonderful. They got me in, they did a CAT scan, but I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die, I'm going to be crippled. It was terrible. It was terrible, and I must believe in angels. Michael pointed out, Miss Hawkins must have been watching over me along with my mom, because I walked away without a scratch, but I took quite a fall. Go back and watch Madam Finlay, what's wrong? Madam Finlay, why don't you answer me? That is exactly what happened.
It was more than just a scratch. It was a subdural hematoma. So
I still have a bump on the
concussion.
back of my head, like near the bottom of my skull here. It's not as sore as it was. So yeah, I had a very Madam Finlay moment.
Yeah. And we've moved to an undisclosed city that doesn't have the best hospital networks. But the woman who was there, Patsy, was terrific. So.
Yes. Anyway, so thank you, Patsy, and everyone at the ER. They were great. But yes, don't have a Madam Finlay moment if you can avoid it. At least I didn't fall to the bottom and, with Grayson going,
But trivia, who did the stunt?
That's Alex Stevens, the werewolf, is actually in the dress. It doesn't even fit him. You can see the dress is rising up on his arms, and the wig barely fits his... And the banister almost falls over. That beautiful banister almost like as he goes clonking down. And they cut away to Kavada Humphreys lying on the floor like...
What's the person's name, that actress?
Kavada Humphreys. You cannot... the woman was born for the stage.
Or porn.
Oh, yeah.
So
I liked Madam Finley,
I
but
mean, or
a
strong second.
oh, what would what what would Dame Edna say? No show without punch.
and
That's right.
and Judy.
Spooky, there were spooky possums.
Oh.
Oh my god.
But we haven't even talked about the purpose of this episode.
I know. Well, I was leading into that since, Madam Finley, why don't you answer me? There's only one person who could have talked like that. And that was the incandescent, incomparable Miss Joan Bennett. I mean, I said it in my press release for the show. She undeniably gave DS its touch of class and dignity and panache. I don't know that anybody else could have played Elizabeth Collins Stoddard. I think Gene Simmons did a wonderful job in the revival.
Yeah.
She certainly was a class act, and she was part of that golden age of Hollywood, so it worked. I think Michelle Pfeiffer was beautiful. I don't necessarily know that I would have cast her as Elizabeth. I think she would have been a better Angelique than an Elizabeth.
Yeah.
But she did a good job with playing the part, making her classy. But it will undeniably always be Joan's. And why don't we, to get the ball rolling, just show how Joan was introduced to us that very first day on June 27th, 1966.
A watched pot never boils. Coin a phrase.
Don't you think you ought to look in on your son?
The little monster's asleep and I'm delighted. I choose my words with infinite precision.
Roger, you're a fool.
Not 1/10 the fool you are, my dear. Look at you standing at the window looking out in the night, waiting for someone who should never have been asked to come here in the first place.
She'll work out very well, I'm sure.
Doing what? Holding my little son's hand? Comforting you when the shutters creak? Elizabeth, with all our ghost, we don't need any strangers in this house, and you know it.
I think I can be the judge of that.
But you don't even know the girl. Elizabeth, I'm your brother. I'm thinking only of your own welfare. Why bring somebody all the way up from New York to do something we're perfectly capable of handling ourselves?
Because I choose to do so.
Oh, come to your senses, Elizabeth. When the girl arrives, give her a month's salary and tell her to go back where she came from. Why don't you open the doors and let the whole town come trooping through the house and have done with it?
The girl will stay.
You are a fool, Elizabeth. Yes, you are. Inviting problems.
The only problem I've invited is standing before me at this moment. I have asked Miss Winters to live here, and she'll stay.
How beautiful was she?
Gorgeous.
I mean, standing in the frame of that window, those eyes, the way she carried herself.
Yep.
You know the dress came out of her closet because most of the stuff she wore in the present day was from her own personal wardrobe. But Michael, I'm going to let you get the ball rolling just in terms of initial
I
impressions.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's really wild. She did have some like good taste. Good for
Right.
her.
Yeah.
You mean how she got me into the show, or how I got into this?
Totally. Yes. Totally.
Okay. So both my father, and my grandmother were huge classic movie. They used to move buffs. I don't even know if that term still is, but anyway, they loved the old black and white films. And my grandmother was not a soap watcher. She was just not into that kind of thing. But she'd heard that there was a soap opera coming out, in which Joan Bennett was going to be the lead. So my dad and her were very tight. She said, when you got home from school, she said, "Come on over here. There's a new show coming on I want to watch. It looks pretty interesting. It's got an odd title. It's Dark Shadows, but it's got Joan Bennett in it." and she's a star. And she started battling all these movies. She'd been in like with Edward G. Robinson and all of these different stars. But they started watching because of Joan Bennett. And so I always tell people that it's because of Joan Bennett that I'm here watching this. If she hadn't heard that Joan Bennett was going to be on there, then my father would have never watched it. And conversely, I would never have watched it. So I have Miss Bennett and her name to thank for this, all of this familial history.
Yeah, I think it probably was the same for my grandmother because, well, I pointed out in previous chats that we had that they were dedicated ABC soap opera watchers. And I think the spooky thing drew them in, but certainly I know that my grandmother and my grandfather were Joan Bennett fans. Growing up, we certainly, one of the movies my mom liked to watch over and over again was Father of the Bride. Whenever that was on, my mom we'd sit down and watch that, and say, she's on Dark Shadows. That's the lady who runs the house, or however she put it. But Mike, I love, first of all, that scene. It's so well written. It's the chemistry off the two of them. They were so palpable as brother and sister. They had such a wonderful chemistry together. And I know Louis said almost right out the gate, Joan was inviting him either to her apartment in New York or to her house in Scarsdale. And they would run lines and rehearse together. And she'd pull out the little portable bar and they'd start having martinis and running lines together. But basically,
did he say something about he had worked out before he got over there, and he would go, "Well, there went all the exercise I just did."
Having the martinis. That's right. Yeah. But God, she just, the skin and the way she carries herself. I was just always in awe of her. But the other thing was that, and we don't see it as much in that opening scene. First of all, what I love about that opening scene is something that some of the production staff of the new Dark Shadows said, and you'll notice Dan Curtis loved low camera angles. So when she walks out of the drawing room, it's like the camera has almost dropped to the floor, and he liked them because they're ominous. It's very ominous when you have those low camera angles, prompting everyone to say, make sure you have your nose hairs trimmed, because Dan loves low camera angles. But the way she walks through those doors.
They were almost, she particularly in that scene, but in most of all of her scenes in the show, she was almost something, she was a human, her characters were all human beings, but she was almost something other than, almost like a fairy or something, a creature of fae. She just didn't fit in with the mortals, and I guess maybe that's that the movie star honing they've done in her era, where they taught you how to walk and talk and be a star. She carried that with her. And to be honest with you, they couldn't have found a better match for that as her brother, because he elevated himself quite a bit to the way he spoke and his diction and his manner and everything. It was a great match. It wasn't one of those situations where you're looking and thinking to yourself, "Oh, those two would never be related. I can't believe they would be from the same family." Not at all. You can see that they would. They matched beautifully, and the scene was done. That was a beautiful scene, and the look. Oh my God, the evening gown and the jewels and all that. They're setting you up for something huge. A fairy world.
Totally.
I've watched that scene a few times now, and knowing the subtext, and we've talked about this before, that Victoria really is Elizabeth's daughter, when he comes up behind her, when she stepped away from the window and says, inviting problems, to me, he is acknowledging that you know what you're doing, I know what you're doing, so I love that subtext of it too, knowing that history.
But it's interesting you bring that up, John, because there are some people that have tried to allude that Roger was Vicky's father.
Oh, no.
there's the whole Betty Hanscombe thing that they get into, the portrait that resembles, which I think was a red herring. We'll get it when we talk about Vicky. We'll go down that rabbit hole.
Sorry about that.
No, but there's some fans that go, oh no, I think it was Roger. I think that she was trying to protect her little brother, and that's why she brought Vicky, why she gave her the money and sent the money every month, and that she was actually Roger's daughter. And another thing, there was a wonderful podcast that Penny Dreadful did on Tara Collinwood recently about the Marilyn Ross paperbacks.
Yeah.
And it's true, there were 2 outlines for 2 other books that never got written. One just flew out of my head, but one was actually done as a novella by Craig Hamrick, and in it, Marilyn Ross was going to explain how Barnabas Collins was the father of Victoria Winters.
Oh.
What the what? I don't know what Marilyn Ross was thinking, meaning Dan Ross. I agree with Penny. I don't think any Dark Shadows fan worth their salt would have bought that as a plausible storyline. No. But Craig did a beautiful...
Ew. Right.
Come on, no. No, that's crazy.
The Ross estate allowed Craig to actually do it as a novella in one of the fanzines. So he did actually write it into a story. But we're talking a real parallel Collinwood here. A real parallel.
Right.
Yeah.
Alternate universe.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, I can't go along with that either.
She looked like Joan Bennett. They had the same look, kind of.
Well, that's the thing, that apparently she, came on to Joan was brought in and didn't have her glasses on, and there was Alexandra down on the soundstage, and she's like, are you trying to put one over? What do you have my daughter doing here? And they were like, yep. According to legend, that's how it happened. Like, okay, that's the one, because they recognize the resemblance themselves.
Hold that face. Hold that kid.
Yeah, exactly.
She was so pretty. Miss Bennett was so lovely that the whole bit where she is buried alive, they know all to serve her in a casket, and they put a bell on the thing and all. When she is in the coffin, she's not supposed to have any makeup on. She's actually in with a velvet robe, crushed velvet red robe or whatever. She looks absolutely gorgeous in that. And then when I don't know how long she's supposed to have been shut up in that casket. But when she comes back, first of all, the reaction is hilarious. But when she comes back and she's standing in the foyer there at Collinwood, she's got her hair perfectly brushed back and in that thing. She's the only person that can say she truly walked out of the grave looking beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. She even had beautiful, I think she had her nails were done, and she had a beautiful ring on her finger when she touched the bell. You can't even make her ugly when you kill her or bury her alive.
Well, she made a joke. She made a joke about that on the Mike Douglas show, where he asks her, was there anything when you were, doing movies at the height of your career that you were very, particular about? And she said, my hair. Always my hair. And she said, I did a Western. She did 2 Westerns. And she said, I was in flood, fire, got chased by the Indians. And every time I would come out of the wagon, not a hair was out of place. Everything was perfect. And the critics reamed her for it. So she said, after that, I said, oh, what the hell, just whatever, make me look, but not on Dark Shadows. Not on Dark Shadows.
Do whatever you want.
Do it, yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite of her characters? Like, in other words, Elizabeth, obviously, probably everybody's one. But after that, Edith, or not Edith,
Judith.
Flora, or Judith.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I love about Elizabeth, and I think Elizabeth is my favorite because almost every good show has that wonderful maternal character, and Elizabeth was that character. She was very protective of Vicky for the obvious reasons. Carolyn certainly, and David, and I love her relationship with David. Anytime Roger really goes after him in that first year.
Mm-hmm.
He's, like David is terrified of him, and she's always taking him and hiding him behind her skirt, and it's one of those things. She reminds me of my grandma. She really reminds me of how my grandma was with me. I won't let anyone hurt you, David, I promise. So I think that's why I love Elizabeth so much. And on that note, I have a clip that, thank you for giving me that lead in, because we're going to run that clip.
Oh.
So long since we've spent any time together.
Well, what do you want to do?
Anything you say,
You want to take a walk on the beach?
if you like.
Okay, I'll show you a place that I found. It's a sort of cove in the rocks. I've never shown it to anyone else, but I'll show it to you.
I'd like that.
But you've got to promise to keep it a secret, because I don't want anybody to know about it.
It's a promise.
I like sharing secrets with you, because I know you won't tell.
I'm glad you feel that way. And I hope you always do. You mean a great deal to me, darling.
I do?
Yes, almost more than anybody. And I want you to remember it.
Remember it?
When you're growing up, I want you to remember that you've always been very important to me and always will be. Don't you forget it.
You talk as though you're going someplace. You're not, are you?
No, of course not.
Why are you talking like that?
No special reason.
Your hair needs combing.
I hate to comb my hair.
Oh, you'll grow out of that
Will I?
when you're grown up.
Aunt Elizabeth, you seem sad. You look sad.
I'm not. Not really.
Well, you do look sad. For a minute, I thought you were going to cry.
Oh, that's your imagination.
You sure?
Of course. Now, if we're going to go for that walk, we'd better get started. Why don't you go and get your coat and I'll meet you downstairs.
Okay.
I love that scene. And if, I don't know if we have newbies to this, but she's planning on killing herself because she doesn't want to marry Jason McGuire. She has 2 close calls on Widow's Hill, one with Mrs. Johnson, and a wonderful scene between her and Jonathan Frid. I wanted to include that, and I didn't have a chance to wheedle it down and put it in the reel, but she's saying goodbye to everyone. She says goodbye to Carol without them really knowing. Vicky is the only one that knows that she's killed Paul Stoddard. But these wonderful moments, it's just so sweet with the hair. You've got to comb your hair, and she's, I love that.
She does convey that sense of final sadness too, that goodbye in that scene without being. In other words, that's hard to play when you're supposed to, you're pushing out an emotion, you're supposed to be amplifying a particular tone, but at the same time you've got to pull it back as the character. You got to have it there but pull it back. And the way she looked away and looked back at him, I'm not sad, and all of that. She played that really well. I mean, there's no. It was a very tender scene, and a sad balloon the whole thing. So yeah, she did, and again, gorgeous.
Beautiful.
She was like that. She was extremely maternal with even Amy. I was thinking about that this week. Here's a little girl they don't know, they just brought her into the home, and they were going to send her to school with David, like as though he'd been there and forever, and she'd been there forever, and the brother, and she does give off that. And I always thought about that. It always amazed me how welcoming the Collins family were when it came to people just living in their house, because of her.
Radical Retro, who tunes in every week.
Good to see you again, Radical. Thank you for being a staunch supporter.
He says, my mother was...
Hello, Ryan.
Ryan. I almost said Brian. Ryan says, my mother was a first-run DS watcher when I started watching in the 5th grade. I found out my grandfather thought she was gorgeous and carried around a photo of Joan in his wallet. I love Joan's elegance.
Aww.
Isn't that sweet?
That's really sweet.
That's
Joan. What was her? Geraldine. Right. She says the middle name of my mom.
yeah.
Joan Geraldine Bennett.
And also, I want to mention the book by Brian Killo. For those of you who have not read it, I actually need to dust off my copy. And of course, the title of the book has just flown out of my head. But it's about all the sisters. I think Joan is kind of the prime focus. But he does talk about the Bennett sisters and the family, and several of the Dark Shadows family, gave their input and their insights to it. I think you and I talked about this, Michael. I don't know if I said it on the show, but
The book is called The Bennetts and Acting Family.
The Bennetts and Acting Family.
And it's equal time, though Joan arguably has the more illustrious career, but it talks about the lesser known sister Barbara Bennett,
Yes.
and then Constance Bennett, who for 7 years, was the highest paid female actress of all time for those 7 years straight. So
I didn't know that. Well, funny enough, Paula Lawrence, who plays Aunt Hannah Stokes in Parallel Time, she knew the family because her husband would send out all the first national tours of the big Broadway shows, and one of them was Anti-Name, which Constance Bennett took over the national tour. I wonder if they ever courted Joan to do that, because I think Joan would have made a great Anti-Name. I think she would have been wonderful in that part.
Yeah. Oh wow. I can't. That's funny. I can't. Wow. Who did she take over for? Rosalind Russell or?
It was Constance. So I don't know how much of the tour Roz did, because she left the show and then she went on to do the movie right after. But I think Constance was the first person to tour, and she might have come. I think that she came back to Broadway. It was love her, Greer Garson.
Greer Garson
Took over for Roz on Broadway. Yeah. But
that I love.
Wonderful.
I love
and again,
Greer
like
Garson.
she had that Joan Bennett way about her. She had that classy but very maternal
Elegant
instinct. Exactly.
They didn't walk as much as glide. They glided across.
Strode into the rooms. Yes, they floated into the rooms. But yeah, that's why I chose that clip. I just love, and you're saying it's she doesn't get credit. I see people on board saying what a horrible actress she was, and I'm like, what show are you watching? Oh my God, Michael! Yes, people, they tear her apart.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Those who don't criticize or can't criticize,
Exactly.
I think she's absolutely brilliant, and you really feel for her. You genuinely, through that whole Jason McGuire thing, you actually, I'm very nervous, and I get nervous through that whole thing. It's very tense. Oh, that's not, you can feel her be scared. She's going to expose of her daughter finding out is the big thing to her. Carolyn finding out. And you protecting
Carolyn. Yeah. She does, and she says,
and that bit when they tossed Carolyn in jail, how upset she is trying to convince Carolyn that she loves her. That's some tremendous acting there.
Yeah, that was another clip that didn't make it into our reel. And she and Nancy Barrett, again, the chemistry. The chemistry between her and Nancy is so... I mean, we see it in the early episodes where she's trying to get Carolyn out of Collinwood because she doesn't want her to wind up like she did. She wants her to go off and marry Joe and have a good life outside of Collinwood. And there's so many wonderful... But the casting really was impeccable. And they all bounced so well off of each other.
Oh, yeah.
There was something about that just flew out of my frontal lobe about Joan as Elizabeth in those early days. David Hennessy remembered that she wore, which I guess was very popular at the time, jungle gardenia perfume.
Right.
So he said,
Jungle Gardenia.
Jungle Gardenia perfume. I'm pretty sure that was the name of the scent. And he said, you just knew when Joan came in the room before she did, because of the, it was such a strong scent. But he had lovely memories.
Now, is it you and I were talking about the scene with her and Vicky later on when she's trying to get Vicky detached from the past, so she allows her. She says she's going to help with that book or something.
That's right.
That's another beautiful scene of maternity, and in that when she says people usually don't like people who break their dreams. That's a wonderfully written, wonderfully played scene.
Right. Up until now, the past has been a kind of a dream for you. But this book would be a reality, killing the dream. Has anyone ever thanked anyone for the death of a dream? I love that line. And she delivers it beautifully. And it's a wonderful tee up. It really is a wonderful tee up to the segue going back into 1795. John, you mentioned that the other night. What does Vicky say? She says something to the effect of, I'm going to be consumed. I'm being consumed by the past. And again, it's another little foreshadowing of what's to come. It's the writing doesn't get enough credit either. Plus all of those wonderful scenes between her and Diana Millay, where she's like saying, "You're not a good mother, and you're not taking this kid. Over my dead body, you are not taking him away from Collinwood."
Those scenes are so. Yeah, and those scenes are so poignant and beautiful, so well acted, with her wanting to make it known that that kid is not leaving the house, and then also letting him know that I love you so much, I don't want you to leave.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love that.
Yes. And her great I've fallen and I can't get up moment on the foyer when when Laura puts the hex on her, that's a great moment.
You knew her voice remarkably well, by the way. I thought that was great. She did have that very affected, beautiful. She had a beautifully purposeful voice.
Do you know how I refer to it? I refer to it as it was like her vocal cords were covered with Godiva chocolate.
Oh,
right. It does give you that impression.
That lovely,
that smooth, sweet voice.
Smooth, silky voice.
One of my favorite scenes with her, a silly scene, I'm very attracted to the way it's done, is when just the whole dynamic of what's actually happening in the scene, and when Barnabas just gets released from the hospital, and Vicky has just purchased the portrait of Angelique, and they just get back. They've gone to the graveyard and all of this, and they just get back, and she says, "Oh, Barnabas," and he says, "Hello," and he says, "I'm so sorry for dropping by unannounced, Elizabeth." And she said, "Oh, Barnabas, how many times have I got to tell you? I don't care how much you come over. So that you make yourself a drink and make me one too." And there's something about that whole thing that I think is very rich. Like, not only is it the excitement of they went shopping for the day, it feels very real, like something you would do with your mother or your sibling, or what, come home with a new portrait. We've gone shopping. We've had a great talk. We had lunch, whatever. Have yourself a drink, cousin, and then come over and see if you can identify this portrait. Incidentally, how weird is it that you're a vampire and this is the portrait of a witch? You're an ex-vampire, and this is a portrait of a witch who's going to plague the family for forever. It's like so human and yet not. It's one of those Dark Shadows moments where it's like, wow, what is actually happening in here is mind-boggling, but so beautifully handled. I love how that's something my mother would do.
Yep. Another great moment is between her and Julia. Now we're into the color episodes, and she's wearing that beautiful dark navy blue kind of dressing gown with the rhinestone buttons on it, which again came out of her closet, and she's asking her, "So how is the book coming along?" And I actually really don't know much about your writing, and Julia's trying to turn it around. It's like well, my books are very scholarly, Mrs. Stoddard. I don't suppose you would have. Actually, I didn't leave Collinwood for 18 years, and in that time, I did a lot
of reading. Right?
Thank God there was no internet. You'd be screwed.
And she's
that is a great scene because you can see Julia is tense.
She's tense, and Elizabeth is like, You're very good, because when this conversation started, it was about you, and now all of a sudden it's become about me.
To me, right?
Yeah, you often wonder. We talked about Stokes. Do you think that Elizabeth wondered what's going on around here? This is awfully hot. Or do you think you turn a blind eye to it?
Let's think of this, right? In 1897, there's the secret that has to be passed down to someone who's trustworthy, the horrible secret. I was thinking, you and I could have been brothers, Michael, seriously. I'm like, isn't it possible that the secret was passed down to Elizabeth?
I mean, if we're taking Miss Parker's book as canon, they use the room to so bad liquor. It's not like anybody opened the casket. She might have said, according to my dad or grandfather, I need you to steer clear, of this.
Don't
please.
touch the casket. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. I often wonder, interesting. She's a very smart lady. She's run this massive estate. She's savvy because, she's been involved with some crazy things. And even if she doesn't suspect him of being a vampire, she knows, she's got to know something is up.
Yeah.
He doesn't work. We never see him work. He's loaded. He's, even more so, I think Roger was just obsessed with his wealth and would never have noticed, because he's just obsessed with the kind of guy he was and the money in his possession and all of that in his presentation. But I think Elizabeth was far cannier than Roger.
The impression
perhaps maybe, like you said,
she was I think she was the one, if they were going to hand the secret down to someone, they could not have, well, plus she was the older one of the two. So, but I think he squandered all of his money, and that's why he had to come back to Collinwood with David. She was basically keeping him. She gave him a position at the cannery just so that he would have a job. And she loved him. It was her little brother. She loved him, but obviously he didn't know how to handle money. He didn't know how to take care of his son, if it really was his son. We'll talk about that at a later date. Because I don't think it was, and they even alluded to that broadly on the show. She thinks she's buried her husband in the basement, and now it's like, oh my God, you know what? I need another one of those little pills that I give Vicky every couple of episodes.
Right. Take this little blue pill. Again, too, another shout out to the writers for advancing women so much, because really, in a lot of ways, the doubles in the series were the men. Elizabeth, Rod, Sam Evans, and anybody in the room over 12. These girls, even Carolyn, when she was bitten by Barnabas, expressed a couple of, hey, this is a little too much for me, or leave me alone, back off me. The women were given great, but especially Joan Bennett's character. She runs all of them, really. Judith especially.
She runs the house. She runs the business. She, and then you have Julia and Angelique. So, which Lamar talked about that, maybe we were right on the brink of women's liberation, and talk about so many strong female characters, and then the head director, Dan, seemed to love Leela Swift more than anybody else. Leela was his go-to. In terms of, whatever else we want to say about Mr. Curtis, he, that was very, very forward thinking of him to have so many strong female characters on the show. So props to him on that. Now we go into the. You go ahead if you have a thought. Go ahead, please.
Oh no, I'm fine.
Oh,
I wasn't
you're
doing
okay.
anything.
You're okay. Okay. Then we go into the past, and she's not running the house. It's not Elizabeth anymore. Now the relationship has changed. She and Louis Edmonds are not brother and sister. Now they're husband and wife. I think, and we were talking about this recently, I think Naomi Collins, again, you feel so sorry for this woman because she's clearly, I don't want to say she's in a loveless marriage, but she has a husband who's, as he says at one point, just because I'm in control of my emotions doesn't mean I don't have them, but yet he's not very demonstrative to her, to his son, to his daughter, and doesn't let her do anything, and which she says has driven her to become an alcoholic. Totally different than Elizabeth Collins Stoddard, except that she has this wonderful maternal quality to her. This is one of my favorite moments where she does say, you know what, I am not going to hit the bottle, and I'm going to stand up for myself, and I'm going to stand up for my son, because I know, Joshua, one day you're going to regret it if I don't do what I'm about to do.
Oh, Mother. I was just coming to find you. Angelique and I are leaving.
I know. I've just spoken with your father. I think what he did was shocking.
I hope you didn't try to persuade him to change his mind.
I did my best.
You might have known what the waste of time that might have been.
I did know, but I did what I had to do. Where are you planning to go when you leave here?
We're going to stay at the inn for a few days.
Well, that won't be necessary. You can live in the old house.
The old house? Mother, that's impossible.
No, it isn't. The deed is in my name. I'm giving it to you as a wedding present.
A wedding present? Oh, Mrs. Collins, how can we ever thank you?
Mother, I cannot allow you to do this.
I already have. You have the deed to the house, and it's yours.
No, I know what trouble this will mean for you when Father finds out about it.
The house is mine to do with as I choose, and I choose to give it to you.
You know he won't accept this when he finds out.
Oh, he'll rage and he'll rant, but I've learned to live with that.
I'm sorry, Mother. I cannot let you be subjected to this.
Then I will have to put it on a different basis. Will you accept the house as a favor to me?
A favor?
I'm doing this for your father as much as I'm doing it for you, Barnabas.
I don't understand.
Deep down inside, he knows what he did is wrong. It may take some time for him to admit it, but he will. And if you are far away, and he can't find you to ask your forgiveness, it will kill him. Will you stay on as master of the old house?
Yes. For you, I will stay.
Great scene.
That's a goodie. That's a goodie.
Great scene. And it also, for me, explains why he wanted the old house, not just because it was ancestral. That's why the old house meant so much to him. His mother gave it to him as a present. So he was keeping that.
That was my first thought watching that.
Yeah. See, there we go. Yeah, that thing of I promised her I would be master of the old house, and or master of the old house.
Wow. Master. Yeah.
But thoughts.
You know what? And how many moms we know would have done things like that? You know, when Dad didn't approve of something we were doing, or somebody we were seeing, or something that. You know, how many of us can relate to a mom who had a strong-armed father, and she stood up to him in any way she could without being grandiose, about it. And so, Naomi, I love the dynamic between Naomi and Barnabas. And I love all of the scenes pretty much between Joan and Jonathan Frid. They're very good together. And that whole story right there, where they get married and and Joshua's upset about it being with Angelique, and Naomi visiting them, going over to see them, and the blood on the floor, but she's going to make sure they're okay, and she tells Angelique, "You're coming back with me. I don't care, da 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 da." That's an interesting, again, thing happening in a series about vampires and witches. The monsters are the people who have not seen the show, which I don't know of anybody that would be watching this that hasn't. The monsters are almost incidental. They're backdrop. I mean, Barnabas less than any other because the torment is what was the monster torment, but it's all about the people and the relationships, and that's such a great. She made that so real, and so Naomi was that was a sad, hard character to watch, because she was so loving, and her fate was just terrible, and that's great too when it reenacts itself. When Naomi kills herself, and then in the future when Elizabeth is under some kind of spell and she thinks she's Naomi and she goes to do the same thing. He's, "I'm not your son, I'm your cousin," and all that kind of thing. That's a great. That's a great scene. He's wearing that brown suit, the one brown suit he had. I think he's wearing that on the back. But you really feel horrible for her. And I like Joshua as a character. He's interesting, the way Louis Edmonds plays him, because you do sense that he's a guy who feels like he has to be in control all the time. And they, again, bounce off of each other beautifully.
So hold on one second here, guys. It says the stream is unavailable again. We're getting people from all over weighing in. Ryan, can you let us know if you can see us?
Please let us know if we're back, guys. It does flag for copyright occasionally, so we don't want anyone to miss out on conversation.
Checking now.
Let's
YouTube's
see.
on it again.
So silly.
Oy vey.
So silly.
We ain't making a penny, people.
No, we make no money off of this. We do it for the love.
God. It's a love affair.
It's a love affair of Dark Shadows. Well, we'll make sure that we're...
Eddie or Ryan, actually...
Please,
people from all over are writing that they can't see us, so...
Stream unavailable. Oh, dear.
Adana can't see us, and then TV Guy. Eddie says he can't see us either.
Stream suspended. It's just crazy that they do this, man.
Excuse me for using my phone here, guys. I'm just checking to see if I can see us back up and running.
That's what I was,
Let's see.
Okay, we're back.
We're back.
Yay! Terrific. We do have a question, though.
Sure.
From Eddie. Peter, I know you know the answer to this. Do you know if they rented those gowns and costumes, or were any of them especially made for the show?
All of the gowns that you see in 1795, and I believe as well as 1897, were all rented by Ramsay Mosteller, the wardrobe mistress, the costume designer for the show. The modern day clothes came from Orbox. I was talking to a woman about this online earlier today. But there were two costumers, Eves and Brooks. They were both in Long Island City. And so everything was rented. Funny enough, where I used to get my original wigs designed for Judy in Times Square, there was a little costume house adjacent to where I had my wigs designed. And the gentleman who did my wigs said, "Oh, you might want to talk to so-and-so about costumes." We got on a conversation and came to find out that Eves and Brooks had been subsidized together, and then they went out of business, and all of their warehouse was sent down to a costuming house in Florida. Everything. Now, from what I could gather, they never got rid of anything. That means that it's very, very possible that costumes that were used on Dark Shadows still existed, even in the 90s or the early 2000s. When they were trying to do the Lost episode that Laura had to reenact, she had to do the narration for in the 1841 parallel time storyline, they sent a couple of Dark Shadows fans to Eves and Brooks to try to locate one of Laura's gowns, but they couldn't. They took photos and they didn't have enough time. I think they had a day to go and sift through everything, but it is not an impossibility. And that's a very long answer to your question, Eddie, but they all came from Eves Brooks' costume house. Everything that was period came from Eves and Brooks until later on. There was a gentleman who came in, and I think he was still renting the costumes, and it was Mary McKinley Haas who started doing the brand new fresh costumes for 1840 and 1841 parallel time. All of those were hand made. The actors had to go in and have fittings done. So more than likely when the show went out off the air, those costumes went to Eves and Brooks, and John and I have been trying to find out, where is that costume house in Florida? Does it still exist? And is there any way we could go down and just go for hours and look through the racks?
And I often wonder if I didn't touch those costumes, because in a former life, back in the early 90s, I worked at the Mark II Dinner Theater, and the Mark II had a renowned costume shop in Florida, and I wonder if any of those costumes were the same costumes. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And then didn't somebody else go to the costume shop looking for a specific set of costumes?
That's for another show, because it doesn't have to do with what we're talking about now. But you're right.
Dun dun dun.
But you're right. You're right. Someone else had to pay a visit to Eves Brooks in a frantic, let's say, for a Dark Shadows related production. They had to go there to get costumes, and we'll leave it at that.
We can't say this person's name because they're Voldemort. But
no,
moving on. No,
they're not Voldemort.
Oh, now we've given it away. We're in the same frame.
We're in the same, yes,
in the same space.
We can't reach out. We can't. No, Michael is in the parallel time room. We can't.
I know. We can't touch you.
I'm in Quentin's room.
You're in Quentin's room. Anywho,
I'm in Quentin's room. The swing.
And what's so sad about Naomi is just that she is so kind to Angelique. She's probably the only person.
Absolutely sad. I think about that all the time. Like, you would think that Angelique would ease up on at least Sarah, if for no other reason, how kind Naomi was to her. And it is completely forgotten. That's the only time I thought Angelique was a little bit too much. Do what you want with Barnabas, I get it. But leave Naomi out of this, you know. Not to curse with me, but he certainly loved Mama.
We want to welcome Cloud Lily. She's commented a few comments, but she says our podcast is a wealth of info for Dark Shadows fans. Outstanding. Applause, applause, applause.
Yay!
So,
we'll give that a Wolfie.
Give it a Wolfie.
We'll give it a Wolfie. There we go. Thank you, Cloud. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah. So, and again, that you brought up the costumes. Just the fact that when we first see her as Naomi, she's got that beautiful emerald green cape on and the hood, and then she takes it off and she's in that gorgeous, they put her in the most beautiful greens, I think because of her eyes. She wore green. She wore green so well. And the thing about Joan was, who I got this from, maybe from Bill Trevia, the costume designer, but a good star wears clothes. The clothes don't wear them. And that's how Joan was with clothes. She knew how to work those gowns. And an interesting side note about Naomi is, I guess, Sam Hall went into her dressing room to give her some notes, and she was getting dressed, and I hope I'm not interrupting, and I'm so sorry to put you through all of this. And he said there she was heaving her breasts into a corset. And and he said, I hope I haven't done you like a disservice. And she said, oh, Sam, I spent so much of my young life heaving my breasts into corsets. I never thought I'd have a chance to do it again. So thank you.
Oh, funny.
I heard she was extremely gracious, and I think it was I heard Ms. Parker say that she would set up. She would run lines. She was just like everybody else. She didn't come in with this. I was a movie star. I was a silver screen icon, which we all know she was. She was very down to earth and actually very sweet, very kind. Like her character, Judith. Judith was a little rough.
I love Judith though.
We're about to get there.
But before we go there, I'm going to ask Peter to tell one of my favorite stories of all time. It has to do with Joan Bennett filming the movie at Lyndhurst. So I'm going to put Peter on screen alone. So Peter, please tell this story.
Well, they were at Lyndhurst. First of all, one of the people that we owe so much for the continuation of the interest in Dark Shadows is Catherine Lee Scott. Catherine started it with my scrapbook memories of Dark Shadows, the Dark Shadows Companion, and on and on and on. The Dark Shadows movie book is priceless in terms of the shooting scripts for the films and behind the scenes stories and so on and so forth. But, Joan had been doing movies all of her life, and this was Dan Curtis's first major motion picture. And she said, Joan would look at the call sheet and she'd turn to Catherine and say, he's never going to get to me today. He's trying to do way too much. He doesn't have a handle on this, in a nice way, but she's like, there's no way he's going to get to my scenes. I know it. So they're down in the basement of Lyndhurst, which now is beautifully finished. Even when I started going back in the 90s, it was not totally up to par. But they were using it as the makeup room. That's also where Julia's laboratory is, where she's studying the blood samples.
Right.
It's down there. So they're getting made up, and apparently there was a sewage backup. Like, crap was being backed up, and there they are having their makeup done. In comes a plumber, probably your typical plumber, with the pants below the equator. And and he looks up and he sees, and he's like, hey, aren't you Joan Bennett? And without missing a beat, Joan goes, I used to be.
Oh my God. You don't think of Joan Bennett and backed up so ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to be.
She was in that. Have you ever seen We're No Angels? Have you ever seen that?
We're No Angels.
Oh God, it's Peter Ustinov, Humphrey Bogart, and I forget the third actor's name.
Oh wow.
And
I have not seen that.
they're prisoners on an island. Oh, it's made in the 50s. They're on or late 40s. They're on some island, like Jamaica or something like that, and they don't know. They think they're just servants or something. And Joan's husband, the guy from Uncle, hires them do the story, but they end up falling in love with his family and making. Basil Rathbone is even in it. He's like the landlord, and he's come to boot them out, and they make sure that Rathbone is bitten by a poisonous snake so that Joan and her family don't get. She is absolutely a stunner in that movie. She is gorgeous in that movie, and that movie where she's getting whipped and whipped.
You would know this. What's the one with Vincent Price? Again, I think they're on an island, and she gets bitten by something, and she falls into a coma. And Vincent relays. He's like, they get to the end.
Green Hell.
What is it called?
Green Hell.
Green Hell. That's James Whale's last movie.
Okay, there we go. And they go.
That's right.
Vincent said, will she be all right, doctor? And they go, oh, she'll be fine. It's just a coma.
Minor coma. Nothing to worry about. No calls for alarm.
No, just
yes. They all hated that movie because they all about how awful it was. But it was a chance to work with James Whale.
Yeah.
So they, a lot of them leapt at it, and Green Hell. That's so funny. I didn't realize that she was in it though.
Yeah.
Oh, now I want to watch it.
Yeah. Just a coma. Just a coma.
It's Douglas Fairbanks, Joan Bennett, John Howard, George Sanders, Alan Hale, Vincent Price, Francis McDonnell.
God.
I mean, literally, cast o' thousands. Yeah, on
The
the
great
list.
thing, though, the great thing is that she really did get to show her range, particularly when Sam Hall and Gordon Russell came into it, because we go from Elizabeth to Naomi. Now we get to Judith, who is, as Edward Collins, a desiccated spinster. She really has gotten the dirty, the dirty end of the stick. Although this scene is so well written when the tables turn in her favor. This is delicious. There's no other way. It's absolutely delicious, and Joan plays it to the hilt. Let's roll that clip.
From this night on, Carl, I am Mistress of Collinwood. And to use one of your trite expressions, don't you ever forget it.
We have 2 jokers in the family now, huh?
This is not a joke.
Well, of course it is. Nobody's found the will.
I have. And I've read it from beginning to end. Now go and get your brothers. I'm anxious to read you all your obituaries. Well, isn't anybody going to say anything?
Anything I have to say will be said in court.
In court, Edward. How melodramatic.
Don't you believe for one moment that I will let this document go uncontested. It is inconceivable that Grandmother would leave Carl and me nothing.
Well, you can contest it to your heart's content, Edward. You will get nowhere.
I always knew that you were capable of deceit, Judith, but I thought that you were above treachery.
And just who have I betrayed?
Me! You know perfectly well I was in line to receive the bulk of this estate, but while I was away you worked on her, didn't you?
I don't know what you're talking
Of course
about.
you did. You poisoned her mind. You suggested that she leave everything to you.
I did nothing of the kind. I spent my nights and days caring for her. I'm the only one who did that.
And you did it out of the goodness of your heart, of course.
I did it because I loved her.
Edward, I think I'm going to cry.
Oh, shut up!
I did love her. That's more than any of you can claim.
You didn't love her. You catered to her. What do you know about love anyway? You're a narrow-minded, selfish old maid.
The balance of power has shifted in my favor, Edward. I'd advise you to be careful of what you say to me.
You think this is the way it's going to end? Well, you're wrong, sister, because I'm going to fight you, and I'm going to
You'll
keep on
lose
fighting.
and go on losing. I am mistress of this house now. It belongs to me. I inherited the Collins fortune. She left you nothing. You're all dependent on me.
Edward, I think she's trying to tell us something.
Can't you ever be serious about anything?
No. Judith, I must congratulate you. I haven't seen you get this worked up in a long time.
If you're going to do nothing but make snide remarks, then get out. Get out of this house at once.
You have a very short memory, Edward. Judith, would you mind rereading the paragraph concerning me?
I'd rather not hear it again if you don't
Oh,
mind.
but I want you to be clear on it. Financially, Grandmother may have given me the back of her hand.
And we just got an email. Okay. So, but we saw most of that scene, which is delicious. So let's see if we're back up and running yet.
Let's see. Hopefully, guys, let us know that you can see us.
How many do I have up?
We're talking about fingers.
Right. Right. Hey, what a great addition Selby was to that family too.
Oh my God,
In
yes.
that scene.
Yes.
You know, the tension brought on by Louis Edmonds and her, and that and then Selby's just like a regular guy. I love when he calls her sister mine.
We're still not back.
We're still not back. Oy vey.
Okay, Barb Arnold says she can see us. Okay, so we just got back. Okay.
We're back.
Hi guys, thank you so
guys.
much.
What's crazy is that when we put this up, those clips go up on all of that stuff disappears. I don't quite understand.
So we just got an email.
Yeah.
It's because it's live streamed.
That's my mother.
So because it's
Your
live
mom is there?
Geraldine Smith. Geraldine Bennett. Geraldine. That's my mother.
Oh.
Hello, Mum.
Hi.
Hello. So nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
She doesn't miss.
Aww.
She doesn't miss.
Oh, that's great.
Naomi.
That's a good mom. Yeah, so I guess because we're live streaming it. All right, well, we'll have to figure it out going forward. But I think the clips are a good addition, so I'd like to try to keep it going that way.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have to warn people in advance that we may get pulled off and then back on again.
So after 15 seconds, you get pulled off.
15 seconds. What can you do in 15 seconds unless you're part rabbit?
We're going to show 1,000 15-second clips of one scene.
So
like
actually,
to get through it.
we are live on Facebook, but we are not up and running yet on YouTube.
Got it. Okay.
So let's keep going for our Facebook fans.
Let's carry on with the conversation. And that was the last.
The greatness of that scene.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Perfectly written, and she acts it to the hilt.
Oh yeah. She's tough, much tougher. You'll keep on losing. I like that part.
You'll lose and
you'll
keep on losing. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. I also love when Quentin threatens Barnabas, because he's like, I've been to England and there is no English branch of the family there. And he's got him at knife point, at sword point, and she comes in with a tray of tea and cookies, and she's like, I don't care whether he is or isn't. That's no way to treat him.
Yeah.
She put him in the tray.
Right. Not like, put that man down. She was very calm about it, They listened. They made tease off. And then, she got, she paid, did a lovely little payback to the Reverend as well.
When she gets out of the asylum, oh my God, it's so, all the phone calls, all of those phone calls, just letting him have it.
She's a force to be reckoned with at that point,
Yeah.
She uses all her power. That's great.
Yeah.
Because I like that because you don't see her sinister, ever. In the series, except for right there.
Yeah.
She's very, but he deserved it. He was a horrible human being, but she she got him good, baby.
Well, and it's funny. We always talk about a possible reboot or a remake, or if they were to, not the sequel series that's been proposed, but if you were going to reboot the show and go through these storylines again and maybe put some new spins on them and maybe make it a little sexier here and there, Worthington Hall, just imagine what would have gone on at Worthington Hall. We all know when it comes to religious overzealots, things can get really dark and nasty. So,
dark.
Really dark.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
do you think, honestly, the Depp movie aside, if they were to reboot, or they were to say do in the sequel series take different story, in other words, instead of focusing just so much on Barnabas and Julia, maybe maybe they would take Miss Parker's, character, the bootlegger and the flapper and the movie star.
Yes.
Who could they possibly get to fill those shoes? Be a young Elizabeth now. Who is a star enough to do that and would do it for series money?
I was thinking about that too. Yeah, who would do it again if we were going to do a reboot? If we were going to take the show and put it back on its feet, it's tough. It's really, really tough when you look at who we have that's Hollywood royalty. I know an actress who she's now past that prime, but she was the Elizabeth Collins Stoddard of that show. Is Erica Slezak. Walter Slezak's daughter, who was the matriarch on One Life to Live. She had that she has that Joan Bennett way about her. In fact, we were talking about when they said they were going to reboot Murder, She Wrote, and I was thinking, who could possibly have that Angela Lansbury quality? And I thought, Erica Slezak. She's the only one that kind of has that demeanor of that old school. But off the top of my head, I'm like, I don't know who, because I love Michelle Pfeiffer, but I don't think she was right for Elizabeth. I loved her,
Yeah.
But there was something I'm like, it just doesn't have that Joan Bennett, Gene Simmons thing going on.
Right.
Yeah. Right. That they're of a whole another era in demeanor and in everything. And I just can't. I've been racking my brain about it, thinking I can't imagine if we're to do. I mean, Roger, you could find a Roger. You could find even a Barnabas would be easier than replacing Elizabeth or any of her subsequent characters.
Yeah.
Judith or any of them. I don't know of anybody who would have, unless it was maybe like a Meryl Streep, who would never do it because she's too big a star, or possibly Emma Thompson. But
in a movie, Emma Thompson might be a good choice.
Oh, I'd love her.
Emma Thompson might be a good choice. Sure. I mean, there might be someone who's really obvious and of a British lineage, because I can't think of anyone from the States that would have that Joan Bennett quality to her. It's got to be, you got to have that thing. You have to have that thing that Joan had.
A genuine sense of elegance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Starlet. She had star powers. She was an icon. Even before she died, she was an icon.
Yeah.
She and I don't know that she knew it, but she emanated. It emanated from her. Emanated. What's the word? She exuded.
She exuded that star. Yeah. It can't be taught.
In the clip you showed from the beginning. The clip that you showed in the beginning. Especially looking at her in that clip. I mean, you knew when they put her in that outfit, that long gown and the earrings and the long necklace and the hair and all that, you're looking and thinking, this is a movie star in a television series. In a soap opera. That's a big ass star in front of you, and you really get that sense in that first episode. Pilots are funny, or first episodes are funny that way, but
it's interesting because it's been bandied about on boards. Well, and it's always the same person, and I
know who it should be. Let it be spoken, let it be said. And we'd have to change the relationship dynamic between her and Carolyn because of the age reason. But I think Jessica Lange would be brilliant.
Oh,
it's funny.
She did a beautiful Joan Crawford.
That's what I was about to bring up.
That's what makes me think.
That's what I was about to bring up, because there are people that have gone onto boards, and because she had taken over for Christina, and it's been, I think Joan Crawford would have been just as good as Joan Bennett, and I'm kind of like, I don't think so. I
no.
I don't.
No.
I just don't see it, and I don't know that Curtis had anybody else in mind.
Joan Crawford is a beautiful woman. Joan Crawford is a beautiful woman and a brilliant actress, but she has, even not knowing her, whatever may be or may not be true about her life and all of that, she has a very piercing quality to her. Even in where Betty Davis is kicking the crap out of her and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, you feel sorry for her, but she doesn't have a very, I don't know that she has what they call pathos. I don't know that I would feel too sorry for her.
Yeah.
Or I would say, like when Joan Bennett, you find out she didn't kill Roger, when you find out that Elizabeth didn't really kill Paul, you're okay. That makes sense. I see that. I can see this whole thing being played out just like that, because she's a very sweet, caring woman who would never do something. Crawford, you'd always be like, I don't know. She might have bashed him on the head and buried him in a cedar chest in the basement. And I don't see her being riddled with regret over it. And I don't know. She's too much of a vixen, whereas Miss Bennett could be a vixen, but that wasn't her overarching quality. She was just a beautiful, gracious lady. So although I do agree with Jessica Lange's choice of Jessica Lange, she did that old star quality beautifully when she played Joan Crawford.
Very much so. So I like that. I would not like, because she already had. You can see her in the updo. She has that same Joan Bennett hairstyle in a couple of scenes. So I could see that. I could definitely see Jessica. I love Jessica Lange. She's wonderful. Since we don't have other clips, and even if we did, we would be hard pressed to show them right now. We get to then Elizabeth of Parallel Time, who's really a poor relation, and she's the only likable character of the family in that time band. Everybody else in 1970 is hateful. They are absolutely hateful. Joan is the only one that you have any shred of remorse for.
Yeah.
And you can't wait for
And Maggie,
Barnabas.
because she's just so pathetic.
Well, that's it. It's the only time. And I'm going to circle back around to this because I got into a powwow with someone yesterday about this. It's the only time that Maggie is a hapless, helpless, full-on victim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A wimp.
Yeah.
She really is a wimp.
It's kind of rough watching her sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. They played that Rebecca thing that Joan Fontaine bit out beautifully with her because she was always, what did Clifton Webb call it, the startled fawn? She always looked like a startled fawn throughout that entire film, and Maggie had that going too. You're right about Elizabeth. I mean, Roger looked like Truman Capote stepped out of Club A4 all the time. Like, the neckerchief down to here. He was like Roger on steroids, and he was a terrible human being, and he loved Angelique, and it was just awful. And of course, Angelique was a complete word.
Yes.
That, I mean, Angelique was less likable in that timeline than in any
One note. One note.
No good in her.
We're gonna before we end the show, we're gonna circle back around to this. I'm so glad that it's come up because one note: hateful, evil, despicable, nothing to back her up at all. I'm gonna put that off to the side, and then we go over to. I love Flora Collins because she is totally making an effort. She's Billy Burke. She is Billy Burke. You look so much like your father in that portrait in Ben's room. She's totally Billy Burke. I love it. I love it.
Billy Burke, if anyone's watching and doesn't know, was Glinda the Good Witch.
Totally.
So yeah, she absolutely. And I didn't notice that until you said it, and then I couldn't get it out of my head.
Yeah.
I was watching, I was like, oh, that's so true. She's going for that completely. That is so true.
Perfect.
Flora was a very interesting character.
Well, she's a novelist, and she said, "Oh, here's a copy of my book, and my latest, And she delves into vampirism, and she's great. Flora's great.
Yeah, I almost wish they would have given her more time as Flora.
Yeah, and you know what I noticed as you get to the end of that storyline, that Billy Burke thing is kind of
dies
like
out.
it. Yeah, they. She needed someone directing her and saying, "Oh, we got to keep that. We got to keep that." I don't know if they made an effort to switch gears because she's supposed to be getting suspicious, but I just kind of felt like, "Oh no, I love that. I love that about her. I love that little featherbrain, flighty,
Right, sex novelist."
She's, "Oh Gerard, I have a novel for you."
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that was a really cool character for her to play. I'm so sorry we didn't see more of that. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Flora, the name. Oh God.
That's
a crazy timeline too.
Very crazy. But I love Vampire Roxanne. I love her.
Yeah.
She's great.
Carmilla thing.
Yes. Yeah. She's great. The brother Randall Drew.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Randall
what is
Drew.
his name in real life? He was pretty cool too. I liked him too.
Yeah, handsome too. He was there was something kind of handsome about that actor. His name escapes me.
He had that kind of old star quality too.
Yeah.
He had that kind of old film star quality about him too. Yeah, absolutely. When I always say Jonathan, 1 or 2 episodes, they actually let his hair not be stuck to his head, and he looked really good and healthy. And then somebody must have realized, oh, the bangs aren't as strong as they normally are. They went right back to it. But in the first couple, when he didn't know Julia until she pulled the cross on him, he looked really good. He looked healthy and he looked good. And
we got a haircut. You could totally tell he got a haircut because in House of Dark Shadows, his hair is way too long.
Oh yeah.
It's
Here.
I mean, yeah, I mean, even when they're sweeping they're giving him spit curls, and then he's got the bangs that are going almost down to his eyebrows.
We have had many people weigh in on this.
Okay. Are we in trouble?
No, about people who should play the part. Oddly enough,
Joan Bennett's part. Okay.
Yeah, 2 people said Sarah Lancashire, who is Julia Childs.
Oh, yeah.
3 people have said Ruth Gemmell, who I had to Google, but she's the mother on Bridgerton.
Oh, sure.
She would be great, actually.
Yeah, not a bad choice.
Some other folks here, I'll just...
Well, if we're going to go down that route, in the same vein, why not Elizabeth McGovern?
Oh, I would love Elizabeth McGovern.
I just from what I saw in Downton,
Elizabeth McGovern.
She has that wonderful
Downton Abbey,
classy way about her, and those big, beautiful blue eyes. I could totally see Elizabeth McGovern doing it.
I'm going through some of these names. Somebody said Imelda Staunton.
She's a little too old at this point. I'm not being ageist,
right?
But I want to say Imelda's got to be in her.
Oh, Olivia Colman. Now she's played a wide variety of roles.
I thought of her.
She would be good.
Yeah, not a bad choice. Not a bad choice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to see if there's any ones that people said. Well, poo on this because she'd be horrible.
You know, Miranda Otto.
Miranda Otto?
Miranda Otto. She's got a very elegant demeanor and a very calm, soothing kind of persona too.
The other 2 names that pop up more than once are Annie McDowell and Julianne Moore.
Okay, I still kind of see them in the Michelle Pfeiffer. But again, you never know. But people can surprise you.
But that was great. We had about.
We love that, guys. Please, we want you. Please,
more than
chime
15
in.
people have given their ideas.
Chime in. Now, I have to say, I mean, in House of Dark Shadows, and I think it was a movie that Joan wanted to forget. I don't think she was terribly. I don't think many people were too pleased.
They did her wrong.
Yeah, they and that's why she eventually becomes catatonic. Just sitting there in the chair.
Yeah.
Apparently just taking tea until she died. From the new housemaid Carlotta.
Yeah. I was gonna say she's just collecting dust and Collinwood. Nobody goes like they're all dead. She's just sitting in her chair.
Yeah, that's it.
Carlotta, I forgot.
Carlotta.
Jesus. I can see why she said I used to be.
Yeah. Oh, and who is she? Now, the last... Oh, my God, her last character just flew out of my head. This is crazy.
Flora,
Judith, Flora. Oh, my God, this is crazy.
I got you. Let's see here.
Please. Oh, my God, bad fan. Bad fan.
And they're all being quiet now. They're not helping. They're letting us dig us in.
Oh, you're not going to help us with her last character.
Catherine Collins.
Come on, fans.
Catherine Collins Harridge.
No, Catherine is Laura.
Oh, then so this is wrong.
Yeah, Catherine is Lamar. Yeah. Oh my God.
Let's see here.
It's Julia Collins.
Judith.
In 1841 parallel time, who is Joan Bennett?
Judith, Naomi, Flora, and Flora, it says. Judith, Naomi. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, Judith, Naomi, Flora, and then Flora again, it says.
So she's still Flora.
So not bad, fan.
According to this.
Okay, she's still Flora.
Yeah,
I thought
Flora
she had another name. Okay. All right, not too bad.
Nora, how awful would that be?
Not too bad.
Denise. We felt like it should be something else.
Yeah, because House of Dark Shadows, she's just she really is wasted. And then that's a whole other topic of conversation. Now I've got to say I consider myself very lucky because my first Dark Shadows festival was her last Dark Shadows festival. She was infirm. It was June of 1990, and she was there the second day and the last day. She was in a wheelchair, and she tried to get up on for the big cast reunion. She tried to walk up the stairs, and she couldn't. So George DiCenzo swept her up into his arms and carried her onto the stage. And she was sharp as a tack, cracking jokes, funny as ever. Someone had said they had seen her tests for Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, and asked her how close she thought she was to getting it. And she said, George Cukor and I were very close. And I think I did have a shot. I really think I had a shot at it. If only Vivian had just stayed away. That was her response to not getting in as Scarlett. But she was so lovely, and I got to get my autograph from her. It was because she died the following December. She passed away. So I always consider myself very, very fortunate. I didn't get up to ask a question, and then I was so nervous. And she was the last.
I was going to say, were you starstruck?
I really was, because I met Jonathan, and I had made a collage for Catherine as Maggie Evans and Josette, and I gave that to her the first night. Jonathan was only there the last day. I made a collage for him of different various pictures of him as Barnabas. I gave him that as a gift. And then Joan was right after Jonathan. She was the last person. And I do remember she kind of was staring off at her husband, David. And he said, Joni, and she went, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I was like, "Oh, that's okay, that's okay, Miss Bennett." And she signed my picture, and she winked at me, and that was it. But I was like, "Oh my God!" And then she passed away the following December. So very, very happy that I got to meet.
Was that the one where the lady said, "How did you," in the question panel? It's on YouTube. How did you feel when you found out that you hadn't killed Paul Stoddard? And she didn't hear what the question was, so I think Miss Parker told it. They're asking how you felt when you found out you didn't kill Paul Stoddard. She looked at the thing and she said, "I don't know." I don't remember. I don't remember. It was just like that, but that was a great answer to what I'd asked,
Just so you know, that wasn't a woman.
Oh, really?
Nope.
Was it you?
It wasn't me.
God,
no.
I heard that.
It predated me. That I think that's the festival before I got involved. But it's not a woman, and they are a very, very respected Dark Shadows fan. They just happen to have a very high-pitched voice. But you're not the first person. You're not the first person to ask that question. Yes, but it's not a woman.
Her response was brilliant. She said, "What?" And she said, "I don't hear." And they said, "Oh, I don't remember." I don't remember. She was very dry. She had a really dry kind of wit. It was really cool.
Very much so.
The interview when she was older, they went to her house, and she finally says, "I'm Elizabeth Collins Stoddard," and yes, that's great. I love to watch that sometimes.
Yes, yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, it was really. I think they did that for. That was for the one and only Texas. They did a 2-day Texas Dark Shadows Festival, and so they went to her home in Scarsdale and they filmed her there. And I saw outtakes. There's actually outtakes of that particular interview. So maybe they'll post those someday. But they're very interesting to watch. Again, she was lovely and cordial, and from what I heard, because I knew several of the people that were there, and they just imparted just what a lovely, lovely lady she was. As a matter of fact, I think her husband started giving them a tour, and Joan wasn't there, and all of a sudden, one of the attendees to the interview said, "I heard a voice say, Where did everybody go?" And it was Joan. So Joan started giving this individual their own private tour of the house.
Oh, wow.
But she was kind of like,
that's cool.
Where did everybody go? They forgot about me. You know, David is off taking them on a tour of the house.
She seems very down to earth, or seemed like very down to earth.
Well, it's what you said earlier, that Leela Swift said, you know, she would come into the rehearsal hall in the morning, no makeup, looking beautiful without a stitch of makeup. She would have her little blue Tiffany's bag that had her homemade chicken soup in it. And she would proceed to help them set up chairs because they were going to block out and say, okay, this is the sofa at Collinwood and this, and she would be helping them set up the chairs like she was part of the production team. She had no pretense about her. She would run lines with actors even if she wasn't in a scene with them. And Jonathan said she was one of my best buddies because we both had a hard time learning lines. So we would always, she would always kind of be there and save me whenever I needed to save, or she would run lines with me whenever I needed someone to run lines with. So he had very, very, as a matter of fact, Nancy Kersey imparted this story to me. They were at a private event. It wasn't filmed. And they asked Joan about her favorite actors. And she said, and she was sitting right next to Jonathan. She said, well, I think, Spencer Tracy, obviously. And I think she might have said Bogart. And she said, those were two of my favorite actors. And she looked over at Jonathan and she said, only two of them.
Aww.
And Jonathan was oblivious. Oblivious, apparently, to the fact that she had paid him such a high compliment. But, yeah.
You.
Yeah, like, listen, she met you, Jonathan. So that was that was very sweet. That was very sweet. Any final thoughts on Miss Bennett, Mr. Panzerato?
Just that I think that this conversation sort of proves that she is one of a handful of a certain era that are irreplaceable. They just, I hate to say it's like she's mobile, but just don't make them like that anymore, that shine like that. And I still say I'm very grateful that my grandmother heard that Joan Bennett was going to be on a soap opera. Otherwise, I would not be here today. And that silky voice and beautiful face, and she brought those characters to life. So God bless her.
She was also a trickster. Timothy Gordon, who played the ghost of Jeremiah, and Jonathan's hand in the release of Barnabas. That's Timothy Gordon's hand. It's Timothy Gordon's hand that's choking Jason McGuire. And you can tell because he had a very hairy, you can't see it with the lace cuff, but in the suit cuff, you can see he had a very hairy forearm. So you can tell that it's not Jonathan's hand coming out of the coffin that chokes Jason. But he adored Joan, and he said she was a prankster. So one day, where he was supposed to be Jonathan's hand, and he had the ring, she said, Tim, give me the ring. Give me the ring. I want to see if they'll catch it. And this was from the morning. She had the ring on her finger, and he said, she's flashing it all over the place, and she's putting it on her breast, and she's holding it up. No one ever noticed that she was wearing the Barnabas ring. She didn't do it for the taping, but she did do it for all of the rehearsals right up until the final blocking and the final dress. She wore the Barnabas ring. And then another day, she came in with a little button, and she gave it to Timothy. She said, this is for you. And the button said, and you can find them on eBay, it said, Dracula sucks. And she pinned it on his Jeremiah lapel. And she said, let's see if they catch it. And he said the same thing. I wore the damn pin on my lapel all day long. They never caught it, but they didn't do it for the final taping. So she also was a little bit of a prankster.
A lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
Full of fun.
And full fun. And Marie Wallace said, when I joined the show, I was there for some rehearsals, and she imparted to her, I'm not going to be on those episodes. Why don't you use my dressing room, dear? So she gave Marie her dressing room to use.
Oh, wow.
So that's
some kind of cool.
That's not your typical star.
Starlet. Yeah. No,
So,
not of that caliber. Wow.
Miss Bennett, we love you. We'll be talking about you more throughout these shows. Obviously, it's inevitable. The only thing I wanted to address was, because we talked about parallel time, on the Dark Shadows board recently, the subject came up about Angelique and her really kind of being a victim. And I thought, what are you talking about? How is Angelique Stokes Collins a victim in that storyline? She is totally one-dimensional. She's horrible. Yeah. She's based on Rebecca. She's the Rebecca that we never see, because you never see Rebecca. And I just kind of thought, and Krista, I don't know if you're watching this, but I had to take into account some of the stuff that you said here, which I think I just saved because I wanted to respond to some of this. So just bear with me a moment. You had said, I thought Angelique had every right to her family, her husband, her son, her home, her friends, and life itself after she was murdered. I'd want that if someone took my life, wouldn't you? She didn't know at first she would have to kill people to achieve warmth, just like Barnabas had to in order to assuage his bloodlust. Guess I can't see the difference. Barnabas and Julia were way out of line and had no business being there, leaving people in that time band to solve their own problems. They nearly destroyed the family and Collinwood itself. They were responsible for numerous deaths there in order to assuage Barnabas's obsession with destroying whatever Angelique he could find. Julia took a baseball cap to her counterpart. I hope she didn't overthink her Hippocratic oath covered that. Angelique was innocent. Maggie is always a hapless victim to the point of no one caring if she's a victim. Okay. Now, listen. I can't agree with you less on any of that, Krista. She's evil. She's evil. Yes, it's sad that she was murdered, but I don't know if they say what goes around comes around, and Angelique used everyone in that time band like, I don't know what. I mean, she just wanted to be the Mistress of Collinwood. It bordered beyond the obsession that the regular time band Angelique had with Barnabas, what she had with Quentin, and her father had a screw loose. I mean, there is nothing likable about Timothy Stokes. He's probably the only Stokes that is unlikable. Listen, if we're going to go down the rabbit hole about what would you do if you were murdered, I lost my mother to stage 4 breast cancer 5 years ago at the tender age of 71. There is nothing more that I would like than to have my mother back. However, I don't think I would take innocent people off the streets and cling them to her body in order to bring her back to life. I mean, they kind of sort of have families too.
Yep,
Exactly as much as I want my deceased mother back, I don't think I would be doing that to people.
Exactly right.
So I can't really agree with you on any of those points, and you're totally entitled to your opinion. But I don't think that Angelique, I had gone out of my way to say Elizabeth is the only likable person from that time band. I don't find any of them likable at all. Maybe I have some pity for Carolyn Loomis because she's also, knocking him back because her husband isn't all that nice.
And we should also point out, as close personal friends
of Lamar,
we can tell you that Lamar felt the way that Peter just described. She was playing the embodiment of true evil, especially in that storyline. So,
in that storyline, not in the regular time band, but in that storyline.
Yeah.
And as far as Hoffman goes, Hoffman was terrible. There is nothing likable about Hoffman at all. I mean, if you read Rebecca or you watch Rebecca, she is sexually, and hey, nothing wrong with lesbians, I'm a big fan, but she is totally, I mean, caressing the lingerie and the underwear and rubbing it to her face. I mean, this borders on psychopathic here.
Sure.
So I may love the Angelique of the present time band, but in parallel time, sorry, there is absolutely no sale there at all. She is evil, and when she dies, I am cheering. They've got Roxanne on They've got Roxanne on Jackson juice on a slab, so that she can keep Angelique alive. It's crazy.
Yeah.
John is laughing his ass off over here, but I'm sorry. The whole thing is cuckoo-ca-choo.
Have you seen? You've all seen Laura, right? The movie Laura.
Love that
the auto
movie.
Yes.
painter with Vincent Price and
Yes.
again this is Danvers, Damien. Okay. So Vincent Price was talking to Otto Preminger. He said, "Well, what do you?" And he said, "Listen, Vincent. Everybody in this movie is a horrible human being except the detective, and he even gets corrupted because he falls in love with Laura. This is the same. Every human being in that time band is wretched. That is natural to that time band. Hoffman is ridiculously deep-dyed, snarling, and Angelique. There should be something redeemable in every villain, or they get bored. There was absolutely nothing redeemable in her. And Stokes was smarmy. He says on the phone, "I haven't got time to talk to you about this," until she says, "I'm the daughter you like, Angelique." You know what I mean? It's like, wow.
Poor
Couldn't
Alexis.
even pretend to be nice to her. Yeah. Ooh,
Poor
Jesus
Alexis.
Christ. You've got one remaining stepdaughter. If they weren't, if they were a part of that timeline, you can count on them being just absolutely terrible.
And let me
Roger was obsessed with Angela. Sorry.
Totally. Let me bring it back to this, because this did happen with Lamar one night in Brooklyn at one of the festivals, and someone kind of brought up this, not this subject, but Angelique and Julia. And they really got into a deep-dive conversation as, the dichotomy of the relationship between Julia Hoffman and Angelique. And Laura's sitting there. Now, she's after a 3-day convention day. She has a little glass of Merlot in her hand, and she's kind of like, oh, baby, God bless you. I love you. Okay. That's
right.
That's right. But it's that story we heard Melissa Gilbert tell. She's in an ice cream shop on Hollywood Boulevard with Allison Arngrim. Now, they're playing sworn enemies on Little House on the Prairie, but they are best friends in real life. They go in, they're 11 years old, they go to get ice cream. A 40-year-old woman grabs Melissa, puts her behind her, and starts yelling at Allison, dressing her down. And Melissa, she's like, I look up at her and go, "Lady, it's just a show."
Right. Right.
I mean,
Hoffman got killed because they couldn't have two Hoffmans in one scene is the bottom line. That's why, and it was cool because she was about to kill Barnabas. So you had some action there, and you could not have two of the same persons in one scene. So there's the reason for that.
Yes.
No breaking of the, and Julia was okay with that kind of anyway. Julia may do with what she had.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Curtis was not about to spring for it because he only does it once with Alexis. I wanted more of Alexis. I wish they had kept Alexis on. But they only did the Patty Duke thing once, and they didn't do it very well, actually. It didn't really quite work. Laura does a beautiful job, and you can even watch the scenes where she's talking to herself, because those are up online to watch.
Right.
Where she's, but they didn't quite have a handle on the split screen effect. And maybe if they had had more time, I would have loved to have seen Alexis live through that storyline. I think that would have been actually a really nice twist. But we will talk about that when we get to 1970 parallel time, and we're nowhere near that yet. We will be back next week.
We'll make an announcement officially in the next 24 hours. But what we'd like to do is add an extra episode next week. But let us talk amongst ourselves.
If our schedules can align, we can maybe do a 2 for next week. We'll see if we can make that happen, since we missed 2 weeks. So we will be back next week, and we have a wonderful guest host or hostess who's going to be joining us for one of those episodes. While I'm on that subject, I would like to say please check out Terror at Collinwood, hosted by the wonderful Penny Dreadful. She's been nominated for several awards. She has a wonderful show.
We love you, Penny.
She just did a wonderful tribute to the Marilyn Ross paperbacks, which we will be discussing eventually as well. There are lots of other Jules T. Sain's chat show podcast that he does. There are many out there. Support everyone. Support all of your fellows Dark Shadows groups and fans, because that is how we keep Dark Shadows alive. It will never die. Thank you so much, Michael Panzerato, as always, for joining us. And DJ Mac.
Thank you for having me.
And we will be back, like Barnabas and Company, we will be back next week, delving into the dark shadows of Collinwood with your Dark ShadBros. Have a wonderful weekend.